Japan Station is made possible in part by Patreon support. If you would like to make sure that I can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Japan Station.
Welcome to Japan Station, a production of japankyo.com. This is the podcast where we teach you everything you should know about Japan, plus a few other things. I'm your host, content creator, founder of japankyo.com, and the anime linguist on YouTube, Tony R. Vega. If you're listening to this on the day it came out, on November 1st, 2025, I will have hopefully just completed my latest walk across Japan, the Kyushu Challenge, a roughly maybe 500 to 550 kilometer walk from Iwakuni in Yamaguchi Prefecture near Hiroshima, all the way down to the southern end of Japan in Kagoshima. I think I will arrive in Kagoshima around October 27th, 8th, or 9th. Hopefully it goes according to plan because I'm recording this before I've even started. I can't record these intros and all that stuff while I'm on the road. I probably wouldn't have enough time to get it all out and edited. So this is something that I'm trying to get done before I even leave to Japan. So we'll see. You can find out right now. Go to my Instagram at Tony R. Vega or my ex at the Vega Tony and see if I completed it or if something happened along the way. Yeah, go check that out. Or you can go to Tony R. Vega and check the Blind Japan project. I may have updated the website by the time you're listening to this. Anyway, today though, my episode that I'm sharing with you has nothing to do with any of that. So today I have an episode of Japanese Plus Alpha. That is the Japanese language focused podcast that I was producing exclusively for the $3 a month plus Alpha tier supporters over on Patreon. I was doing this maybe like 2-3 years ago for quite a while. I am not doing it anymore, but I may in the future. You never know. I would love to keep doing more episodes like this if I find the time and I see that there is demand. Whatever the case, though, with that, what I can tell you right now is I've got another fun episode about some quirky thing about the Japanese language. I hope you enjoy it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and maybe share the podcast with somebody if you think they might enjoy it. That is always extremely helpful. All right, so here's the episode. From japankyo.com, this is Japanese Plus Alpha, a podcast about the Japanese language and its various quirks. My name is Tony Vega, and today we're talking about meat and potatoes, aka nikujaga.
Nikujaga desu ne.
So nikujaga is this very common dish in Japanese cuisine. Actually, it's technically yoshoku, which is Western-influenced Japanese cuisine. And as the name implies, it basically consists of meat and potatoes. Niku means meat. Jaga comes from jagaimo, which means potato. And it's basically meat, potatoes, maybe some onions, some vegetables, some konnyaku, all cooked with soy sauce and mirin. It's good stuff, but you don't normally see it at, I think, most restaurants. That is both in Japan and outside of Japan. I guess it's because it's such a home-style sort of dish. Every once in a while you do see it in a restaurant, but you got to look a little harder than, for example, some more common dishes. But anyway, we're not talking about Japanese cooking today. We're actually talking about words in Japanese that are abbreviations and are 4 MORA long. Nikujaga happens to be one of these, but you may be wondering what the heck a MORA is. So a MORA is kind of like the Japanese equivalent of a syllable. So a syllable, of course, is his way of dividing up words in English, right? Well, you can actually do it for, I assume, any language in a way, but we're talking about English right now. So in English, if you're going to use syllables to divide the word sandwich, you're going to end up with 2 syllables, right? Sandwich. I think pretty much anybody that has done their schooling in an English-speaking country is pretty familiar with this idea of syllables, right? But in Japanese, you divide words into MORA. And an easy way to think of a MORA is basically one hiragana is the equivalent of one MORA. And MORA are not always the same as syllables. So, this is getting a little confusing. But for example, take the word kantan. Ka-n-ta-n, right? You use 4 hiragana to write it. Don't worry about the kanji for the purposes of this explanation. Kanji is not relevant right now. Just think about things in terms of hiragana and maybe katakana, but I'm only going to be talking about hiragana. But basically, they're the same thing for the purposes of this explanation. So again, kantan is written using 4 hiragana, so you end up with 4 mora. A mora is kind of a beat in this sort of situation. So ka, n, tan, n. Each one of these lasts about the same amount of time. And this is according to research that I have a vague recollection of from my days in graduate school studying Japanese and linguistics and all this stuff. I'm pretty sure that was in my phonology textbook, but so you can double check my assertion here, but I'm pretty sure that's what the research says. Anyway, so in English, if you were to divide kantan into syllables, you would end up with 2 syllables, right? Kantan. But in Japanese, if you divide it up into mora, you end up with 4 mora. So sometimes mora and syllables have the same amount in a word, but sometimes they don't, such as in the case of kantan. So let's go back to nikujaga. So nikujaga. So that is 4 mora. It's actually an abbreviation because niku jagaimo would be the full version of this in a way, because jagaimo is potato, but then you chop off the imo, which means tuber or this kind of like root vegetable, I guess you would say. You chop that off and you end up with nikujaga. In Japanese, there's a whole lot of words that are abbreviations of longer terms or words, and they are 4 mora long. So they chop them down into 4 mora. And this happens just so often. There's older words, there's new words, there's slang and blah, blah, blah. There's so many different examples that fall under this 4 mora abbreviation category. And so I wanted to bring up a few more examples. One really interesting example is jagaimo. So as we discussed, jagaimo means potato. And apparently, according to the most widespread etymology that I was able to find, and there's a chance that this is wrong, but I think it seems pretty plausible. So jagaimo was originally jagataraimo or something along those lines. And that's because potatoes came by way of Jakarta in Indonesia, because traders, presumably Europeans, they brought potatoes originally from the Andes in South America, right? But they made their way to Europe and then eventually to Japan, because potatoes are originally from South America and the Andes and all that. And according to this story, this etymology, potatoes made their way to Japan by way of traders via Jakarta, right? So I guess they stopped in Jakarta and then they would eventually make their way to Japan. Now, did this actually happen? Well, to some extent, yes, it did happen. But is this where the name jagataraimo came from? Is that a thing? Probably. I'm willing to believe this etymology, but again, I can't say this is exactly what happened with 100% certainty. So according to the story, jagataraimo eventually got shortened to jagaimo. So there you go. Apparently, nikujaga has another 4 mora abbreviation inside it, so it's kind of like a 4 mora inception. But there's so many more examples, so I'm just going to throw out a few more. Here's one that I find interesting, itaden. Itaden. So itaden means a crank call or a prank call. I mean, whatever term you want to use to describe this. But, you know, when you call somebody to mess with them, to play a joke on them. So this is an itaden. And this comes from itazura denwa. So denwa means phone, and then itazura means like mischief or prank or something along those lines. So you chop off those extra little bits there and you end up with itaden. 4 mora word. There's also a bunch of these for greetings, especially New Year's greetings. So there's akeome, which is akemashite omedeto, which means Happy New Year. And then kotoyoro, which comes from kotoshi mo yoroshiku onegaishimasu, which means like basically keep me in your good graces this year, or I hope we can get along this year. It's a really tricky thing to translate because it's very, very contextual, but basically it means like treat me well this year as well, or something along those lines. You know, let's have a good relationship this year too. So often, especially younger people, will shorten this standard greeting, which is akemashite omedetou gozaimasu, kotoshi mo yoroshiku onegaishimasu, into 2 four MORA abbreviations. Ake, ome, koto, yoro. Very simple, very short. But again, four MORA abbreviations. Here's another one for you. Merikuri. That is Merry Christmas, right? Which is much longer, but that gets shortened down to four MORA Merikuri. Here's another one. Pasokon. That comes from personal computer, which is basically a personal computer or a PC. That gets shortened down to pasokon. Then there's rimokon, which comes from remote controller. That is rimokon for MORA. Here's another one for you. Konkatsu. That comes from kekkon katsudo. So kekkon means marriage, and then katsudo means activity or to do something, a lot of times with like a goal in mind, I guess you could say. And kekkon katsudo, or konkatsu for short, konkatsu for MORA, means to actively seek a partner to get married to seek a marriage partner, konkatsu. There's also a bunch that end in hara, so that comes from harassment. And for example, you have pawahara, which is basically, usually you hear it used to describe like workplace harassment. Literally, that is power harassment, but I believe that is waseigo, which is English made in Japan. I don't think normally you would say power harassment in English, but you get what I mean, right? Basically, workplace harassment, a boss harassing a subordinate. There's also sekuhara, which is, of course, sexual harassment. And there's a bunch of other something hara. All of these are basically abbreviations, short forms of something harassment that end up being four MORA long. And here's one last one for you, which is jipan. So this is jeans pantsu, I believe, would be the original long form of this. And with this, you're just referring to blue jeans, like the pants that you put on, right? Jipan. That is G-E-P-A-N, right? For MORA. By the way, when you elongate the vowel, that becomes one MORA as well. So that is why you end up with G-E-P-A-N. So one last thing that I want to mention here before we close this out, though, is that, yes, there's so many of these four MORA abbreviations, but not every single kind of short form of a longer term is for MORA. Sometimes they get shortened down to 3 MORA or 5 MORA or, I don't know, 2 MORA, 1 MORA. For example, arubaito, which means part-time job, and that comes from the German, I believe it's something along the lines of Arbeit. Unfortunately, I don't know how it's pronounced in German. I also believe that the original German meant something slightly different, but in Japanese, arubaito means part-time job. That normally gets shortened down to 3 MORA, baito, baito. So it goes from arubaito, which is 5 MORA, down to 3 MORA. So of course there's exceptions, and not every single short form of a term ends up being 4 MORA. But I would venture to say that the majority of times you end up with 4 MORA kind of short forms of words. Often this happens with, for example, band names and names of shows. For example, there's many light novels and anime that end up with 4 MORA titles, even though the original form of the title was something much, much, much longer. So, for example, Konosuba, I think the original title is something like Kono Subarashi Sekai, blah, 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 something like that. I don't remember. But there's plenty of examples, especially in the world of light novels, also plenty of dramas, TV shows. So this happens a lot. And why does it happen? It's just something about the language. I guess 4 MORA is just a sweet spot. 2 feels a little bit short. You can't combine 2 things in such a clear way. 5 feels kind of lopsided, maybe a little bit too much. If you're going to end up with 5, then why shorten it in the first place? 4 has this nice rhythm to it, I guess. So it just works, and people just do this in a kind of unconscious level a lot of times. And apparently this has been going on for quite a while because, for example, nikujaga, I assume this has been in the Japanese repertoire of cuisine for at least, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years. This seems like it's been around for a while. So something about the language, it just seems to be a nice sweet spot for MORA. So once you know about this, you start to notice it all over the place. Here's one last one that I just thought of. I just remember this one because it's such an interesting one. I thought it's worth mentioning. But pachipuro, pachinko pro. It's a professional pachinko player, like that sort of metal balls game that you try to win for money. Pachi puro, pachinko puro, pachi puro is for MORA. So there's so many examples of this. And like I said, once you notice it, you start to notice it all over the place. So keep that in mind. It's just something fun. I don't know if it'll really help you in your journey learning Japanese if that's what you're doing, but it's certainly a fun little quirk of the language. So anyway, if you want to find out something related to nikujaga that I always think of whenever I hear this term, stay tuned until after the little outro sign-off thing, which is right now. So thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Japanese Plus Alpha. All right, so time for the little bonus here. So this has been going on ever since I first heard the term nikujaga and had never even eaten it or really completely understood what it was. But I don't know. This is the way that I am. My mind always makes silly connections and things that make me laugh. But nikujaga just always sounded to me like the way that you say the name of the Rolling Stones frontman, Mick Jagger, in Japanese, right? You would say it Mikujaga. And to me, every time that I hear nikujaga, well, maybe not every time, but like 90% of the times, I end up remembering Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. So there you go. That will not help you at all in any way, but maybe it made you laugh or smile or something. So next time you're in Japan and you have the opportunity to try some Mick Jagger, please try. All right, guys. See you next time.